Here are 6 fantasy books slash series that I would recommend to my grandma or your grandma. I mean, not my grandma, because mine doesn't speak English and the other one is a terrible human being. But if she did, if she wasn't, here are some fantasy book series that I'd recommend. And these are very generalized. You know, I'm trying to keep them appropriate, even if there are some violence or maybe some sexual scenes, but just like generally speaking, appropriate, you know, good messages. I think they read in a way that I think an old timer might like. First, we're going to start off with these 3 right here. We have one standalone, one book 1 in a series that is incomplete, so it's only book 1 out, and then book 1 in a duology because I haven't read the second one. First off, we have Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Su Lin Tan. To me, this book seems like just an adult fairy tale, and I think adult fairy tales would appeal to older people as well. Assuming your grandparent is not Asian, I assume that they have not experienced Asian fantasy in literature, or they have very minimal experience with it. Non-European fantasies only been a thing for the past, I don't know, 20 years tops. And so this is very new. So I think they would be interested in getting a perspective that they don't normally have from a culture that they don't normally view, watch, visit. I don't know. This is a story about a daughter of an immortal moon goddess. The daughter is also immortal. The moon goddess, her mother, was originally not an immortal, but became an immortal, which pissed off all the other gods. And they were like, okay, we're going to entrap you here. And so the daughter leaves to go and find a way to set her mother free from her prison. It's not too deep, but I think it's very fun. And I think it's a very good entry point if you want to experience fantasy from another culture. Continuing that theme with fantasy from another culture, we have The Adventures of Amina Asrafi. This is a Muslim pirate adventure. Another thing, like I said, where I think it's a good entry point for reading about fantasies that are inspired by other cultures that aren't European. The main character is a woman in her 40s or 50s or something, right? So she's not young by any means. She's not old though. She's not old. But, you know, it's one of those books where she's a mother, right? He kind of comes out of retirement to save an old friend's daughter. And so she gets her pirate ship, she gets her crew and goes on an adventure. You know, there's magic, there's demons, there's all these sorts of things, right? And yeah, it's just one of those things where now there's such a wide variety of different types of fantasies these days. And I think that especially for the older generation, they could benefit a lot from reading these different perspectives, and also pirates. Next, we have Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is a historical fiction fantasy set at Oxford in the 1800s, I think. 1828. There you go. This is another one that explores different cultural identities and criticisms of capitalism, colonialism, things like that. It follows a young boy named Robin who was taken from China at a very young age and brought up to be British. And so I think there's a lot that we can learn about his situation and stuff like that. And I think the way this is written kind of gives like older vibes, a hot take. People might disagree with that. And so I think they also might enjoy the way it was written. But the magic's very interesting, very fascinating. You know, if you have an older grandma or whatever and she's likes literature, then she'll like the way the magic system in this thing works. It's like a slightly stressful book, but it's also like very, very educational. And I think something that older people probably need to read, especially in these tumultuous times. I don't know if I used that word right. Now for a full series that I have read, it is The Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. This I think will appeal to kind of that older classic style fantasy whilst being modern. This I think is less than 10 years old, or maybe just turning 10 years old, or I don't know, something around 10 years old. The first book here is Malice. It's definitely like UK-esque style fantasy, Chosen One, things like that. Although when you're reading it, you can tell it does feel very modern just in the way it is written. There's like a bajillion POVs. So I think that if you want something to appeal to what fantasy was like kind of back in the day, but in a more modern sense, you should take this up as well. I think the whole bajillion POV thing, I want to say is a more modern thing, but I know Wheel of Time does that a lot. But I do think that this is a very good entry point for, I think, just fantasy in general. But if you are more used to the fantasies of back in the day and want to try a fantasy that's more written in a modern style, this is a good like transition to that, if that makes sense. So I think the older generation would really like it. Malice book 1, Valor book 2, Ruin book 3, Wrath book 4. Just trust me, you'll love it. I was hooked on these, and I've only ever had like 4 or 5 series books that have hooked me to the point where I ignored everything, and this is one of them. So definitely check it out. Next is the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. Book 1, Assassin's Apprentice. Book 2, Royal Assassin. And Book 3, Assassin's Quest. These came out in the mid to late 90s. This is a story about a bastard son to a prince who gets taken in by the kingdom and is raised to be an assassin, basically. Not necessarily assassin the way we normally think of it, with like, you know, sneak attack axe and blades and stuff like that. There is some of that, but not really. It's more politics and drama oriented, but the way it's written, when you're reading this, you're like, okay, you can tell that this is an older writing style, and so I think this would definitely appeal to an older generation. I love these books. I just finished them. I think they're so amazing so far. If I had to choose any one of these books on this list to be recommended to your grandma, these books. Robin Hobb would have to be my go-to. The characters are fascinating. They're very complex, frustrating at times. The magic is very interesting. We're in like the telepathy sphere, kind of, whether it's with other human beings or with animals. Yeah, I think Robin Hobb is now like a grandma herself. You know, maybe they can relate, right? Good old classic fantasy written by an author who is probably your grandma's age. Highly, highly recommend. Please, this is the one you have to choose. And then finally, we have Live Ship Traders. I just finished book 1. I'm only like 30 something pages into book 2. Well, I haven't completed this series yet, but book 1, Ship of Magic, book 2, Mad Ship, and then book 3, Ship of Destiny. These are also Robin Hobb books. I recommend just the Realm of the Elderlings in general. I'm currently working my way through it. This whole universe has like 16 books or something like that, all in different trilogies, except for one's a quartet, I think. For at least the first book, I don't think you need to read the Farseer trilogy in order to read it. I do recommend you do read the Farseer trilogy first. I think I did see like 1 or 2 spoilers for what happens in the Farseer trilogy here in Ship of Magic, but I mean, I think that if you're not looking for it, you won't see it. But there is a very solid chance that Farseer does get spoiled heavily, really heavily in Mad Ship and Ship of Destiny. So keep that in mind. But at least so far, I don't really think you need to read Farseer to read at the very least book 1. But this series is called Live Ship Traders, and it centers around ships that are alive. They have the masts or the figureheads, I guess, of people, and then those people like actually come to life and they can like are the ships, I guess, and sail the ships. For the most part, book 1 is very like politically and family drama oriented, I guess. I found myself really enjoying it. It felt like a soap opera kind of. But as the book went on, maybe about a little more than halfway, then it started becoming more fantasy. And then I suspect that that'll only continue to be the case more as the series goes on. I say Farseer trilogy and then hit up some Live Ship Traders afterwards. This is my #1 recommendation if you want your grandparents or your grandma or whatever to get into the fantasy sphere, I guess. Assuming they're willing to do a 3-book commitment. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe. Follow me on all my socials. Check out my wish list and sponsor links in the description. And I'll see you next time. Peace.